Hey, Rick. Come on out.
I'll be right there. Bye-bye.
Right. Rick, how are you?
Well, I'll tell you, you must be pretty successful.
Why, you like this, Rick?
Well, this is pretty fancy, right?
It's paid off even. Can you believe that?
Even better. Good for you.
Yeah. It's a 2008, and I bought it new.
Oh, you did?
And
Okay.
then I put the money into having it all fixed up.
Yep.
You know, you can live in this thing, Rick. I mean, it's got a microwave. It's got 110, a really nice inverter.
Wow.
The beds, it becomes a full bed in the back.
Yeah.
To show people.
Didn't you used to always have a dog in here?
I did. She passed away last year.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Yep, that's the sad
Yeah,
part.
I got
but,
you.
you
See,
know, we
like
do
a-
what we can.
Is that a ukulele or what is that?
Yeah, my son picked that up and taken it.
All right, Gino, how you doing?
You know what? I want to ask you about this. You've been here for a long time in the keep.
I bought after I moved a couple of other spots. Yeah, it must be 10 years.
Is this? Would you consider this an example of good housing, a good concept in housing? It's kind of clustered.
It's not bad. It's got some downsides. The parking is during the summer. You know, the frame guy. I mean, I don't care. I'm not in a customer business, but other people are.
Yeah.
And you know, if somebody's having a meeting or I have 4 people in there, it's a little tight on parking. But the upstairs units are small, 2-bedroom smalls, but they work. And most of them they're not all rented. Maybe it's 50-50, Gino.
So the bottom is
all commercial.
Commercial, and the top is residential.
Right. And the commercials get 500 feet in the basement.
They do. Oh,
and
wow.
the apartments don't get much in the basement, which
I
is
see.
too bad for them. But anyway, it works. And as I say, you can tell some of the folks are, working types, if you will, the painters and things.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. And property values here, kind of.
You know, I bought it, it's all public stuff at 179. I think there was a point where it might have been worth, 275.
All right, that's not bad.
Yeah, but I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, right, sure.
And
that's still a pretty good. Does that include the residential?
No. That's just the commercial in the basement.
Oh, okay.
The residential units maybe got to a high of, during this 2006 or whatever.
Yeah.
It got up to, somebody might have paid $450. I mean, jeepers, like nuts.
Yeah, right.
But then they're way off from there. They're not worth that much anymore.
So how's your day going? What are you
back.
working on? What is your job? Are you a lawyer?
I'm not a lawyer. I've done a lot of close lawyering, Gino.
Yeah.
So
You're somewhat of an analytical guy, I would say.
Maybe a little bit. I worked. I got an MBA.
Yeah.
Way back when. So you do some studying of business facts, which involve math and analytical thought processes. So there's some of that.
Yeah.
In the process of my work over time, I've had to pay attention to legal aspects to real estate transactions or banking transactions. So there's a little bit of, over time, you learn a fair amount about the law that way. So
Okay.
I'm not a lawyer, but I get the idea. I took a course in business school, some time ago now, business law 1 or 2, and that sticks with you.
Yeah.
So the basics never go away, Gene.
So you're a businessman?
After I got a master's and I got an MBA, master's in business administration, went to work for a bank way back when.
Yeah.
And so I have that background. Here, the business I'm involved in is a small real estate mortgage investment firm.
Oh,
And we invest for our own portfolio.
Yeah.
We're not brokering loans to others. So that's
But
kept
not on
me.
Nantucket. It could be anywhere.
It could be, but there's some here, some on the Cape. I like to. It's a business where you want to be able to see and feel the real estate and be able to visit it. Gino.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have things, sort of Rhode Island to Cape Cod, and over to Nantucket.
And are they commercial?
No, mostly residential, some commercial. A
Okay.
little bit of each, though.
Okay.
It depends on the transaction. The commercial, I'd say commercial are mostly multifamily types things. So those are, some people look at those as residential, Gino.
I see. And here
And,
you are.
and that keeps me,
Yeah.
you know,
We got to
busy,
pay the bills,
busy a little bit. I got to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
Like anybody
right?
else.
Like anybody else.
Yeah.
We all got to work.
So that part's good, but it gives me a fair amount of freedom to do my other activities, you know. So that's the nice part.
And one of your activities is your love for being a selectman. I mean, let's just call it like it is.
Gino, you got to admit, you wouldn't keep running if you didn't
know
enjoy
that.
it, and I do.
Do you want to keep doing it, Rick? I mean,
I do. You know,
what if in another 3 years it comes
well, you know, you never say no, but you know, Gino, I mean, my age is probably, I'm 71 years old.
Oh, that's young today.
That's young today. So, but I'd be 74 in 3 years. And one of the things you give up in this is, you know, a chance to sort of travel with your spouse, and you don't have quite the freedom.
I'll
you know?
I give you
Yeah.
credit for doing it. I couldn't do it.
So there's a point in time where
Yeah.
we may say, you know, and I've enjoyed it. I've had a good run. Hopefully, if I get another 3 years, but that could be it. You know, even I look back when I was in college and during the summer, you had a chance to read, and you could read a good novel and all these things. But you know, there's enough workload being a selectman. You know, you don't have quite the freedom to do that anymore.
Well, here's the other thing, Rick. I've noticed this. The challenge that you place on your brain as you get older, you almost need it,
Yeah.
don't you? I mean, if you
You mean
didn't
in
have
terms of
something
the activity? Yeah.
for both the body and the brain, of course the
Right.
body too, but your brain really, you want to engage it
That-
and have challenges to meet
Those
goals.
are good comments
Yeah.
because you know, you're active. You have interpersonal exchanges with people. You have to be ready to deal with people who don't agree with you, and you know, so there's a lot
And
going
I got
on.
to give you credit. I watched you the other night with those two ladies. You were
Yeah.
held on to that.
Well,
that meeting.
I did. I think my
I
fellow
would've lost it.
selectmen were about ready to throw me out of my chair, Gino. I mean,
was some
let's
good-
admit.
That was a great meeting, though. I found that was so much fun to watch. You know, listen, I feel bad. Sorry, you know, it doesn't always work out for everybody.
Right,
but,
right.
But it
So-
was still entertaining.
It was entertaining, but you know, and it's interesting. They put a lot of work into their.
And we should let people know it was these two ladies that did not want to have this widow's walk built in the
on the house next door.
on the house next door.
In
they
effect,
just would not. They
Right,
hated it.
Right, and they put a lot of work. They wrote practically a legal brief, and
Right,
they
right.
pointed out a
I
lot
thought
of
they were
things
lawyers.
that were. Yeah, there were things in the process that probably were a little inconsistent, but I don't think that changed the substance, like it or not, of how the HDC ended up with their recommendation. So there are two different problems there. But we don't get those all that often, although Linda Williams the other night said we've got a couple more HDC appeals coming our way. So that's
Okay.
part of what you have to deal
All
with.
right. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get on with this.
All right.
I've asked,
Yeah.
you know, all you guys to pose 2 questions to the other candidates to answer, and you can answer it as well.
Yeah.
So, Bob DaCosta's question: what is the biggest priority to the town to address?
Well, you know, this is like the question of the IM. Well, what are your priorities? And you know, I'm not sure there's one that's the biggest, Gino. So I've said really I've got sort of 3 areas that I've been interested in, I want to continue to be interested in follow. And one is keeping the town on sort of a strong financial footing. That's been an important thing for me. And it's important to the taxpayers. So we got to provide the services, but be efficient and cogent and keep our books in order. All of that's important. And that's
Would you say?
an annual
Would
process.
you say we are?
Yeah, I think we have demonstrated, not just since I've been in office, but during the past 6 years, that we could provide the services and we don't need to have an override. And I think we're doing a much better job. We have audits that are unqualified now, Gino.
Yeah.
For a few years we did. So we are doing a better job.
What about an override, Rick? What would precipitate you to want to actually think that we should do that?
Well, I think it would take a sort of a major sense that there was something we weren't getting done, Gino. And I think that, you know, the town provides a broad range of services. I mean, when you look at it, you know, we're not like a town on the mainland. We all say this over and over again. We got an airport, we've got our island home, we've got a landfill, we've got all these things. So I think we, as a government, pretty well provide the services the community expects us to. There's always somebody who wants you to do a little bit more work in this area or that area, but I think we've got a good balance right now. And the tax base, the way we have it structured, supports those activities. They really do. I think the taxpayers, if there was something really, really unusual came up, that they're going to respond. I think they will respond over the next few years with our capital needs, Gino. And they're going to have to dig in their pocket a little bit to do that. So,
Should there be a moratorium on summer events?
not a moratorium, but, at some point we're going to have something every single weekend. And, it's interesting. I don't know that our job is to provide the moratorium per se. I think our job is to make sure that we make sure any event that we have an involvement with because it's on public property or needs noise waivers is, sort of well monitored, is not overly excessive. I think that's our primary job. The marketplace, I'm a big believer in the marketplace works things out. So I don't know that we're in the moratorium business, frankly, Gino.
Right. Here's your question. If you are elected, will you commit to seeing that the town lives up to its stated intention to secure alternative access to Baxter Road?
Yeah, obviously, I've had an interest in the Baxter Road matter. I've followed it for some years. And I think our responsibility is to provide alternate access. Our responsibility is not directly to allow erosion control to protect, let's be honest, private properties. But we do have an obligation. So the town, and I expect the current selectman and hopefully any new selectman will remain committed to make sure we get in a legal form easements, or if we have to resort to takings, we will, so that if it's necessary, we can take the action to provide that access, Gino.
Yeah. Okay. Your second question.
Yep.
Do you believe that the town should give perpetual permission to private interests to construct erosion control projects on public land without the permission of the citizen owners?
Gino, obviously
so you're
that's
referring to the same
project,
right.
But it's a broader question, but it has a specific reason here. I think the town, and I use two examples. One is the Hunting Association, another is Sherburne Commons. Both of those enterprises are on leases. They're defined terms. They went to town meeting for permission to use public property. The use of a license agreement for the erosion control project, and that project, let's admit, is not, even though it's called temporary, it's not a temporary investment. I think that kind of thing deserves the town meeting approval, and a lease agreement is the proper vehicle.
All right. Adam's question.
Yep.
Almost 10 years ago, voters of Nantucket approved the purchase of land opposite the new police station with the intention of having it being used for affordable housing. Given the authority of the BOS to handle it.
Yep.
We've built an $18 million police station, but nothing has been done to build affordable housing. What priority will housing play to you in relation to other possible capital projects?
Interesting question. Obviously, housing is topical. Every 3 or 4 years, we get an article in the newspaper that says the housing situation is worse than ever. Well,
we're hearing it right now.
We're hearing it right now. That's why it's topical. But it was topical 5 years ago, and I think it's the result of a rebounding economy. I think we have a lot more construction, landscaping, retail, restaurant activity than we had 2 years ago during the recession. That creates stress. So we have a project, Sachem's Path, is coming along with 50 units. That's on town-owned property, so the town has been active. The Board of Selectmen voted to give a lot to Habitat recently. And really, all the properties that Housing Nantucket, Habitat, the Housing Authority are essentially on property provided by the taxpayer. Okay, so the town has been involved. What's going to happen ultimately to the property over near the public safety facility at 2 fairgrounds or 4 fairgrounds? I think we need a master plan that really sort of looks at the whole thing. People at the same time, in addition to housing, they talked about a community center. Obviously, we have a fire station issue. So we've got lots of things.
Yes.
And we'll sort that out in the next couple of years. I must say, in terms of housing, employers have I think, the primary affirmative responsibility to make sure the housing is available for their staff. That includes the town. So ultimately, the town may decide it has to move forward to provide housing, maybe for most of our seasonal workers.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you about that.
And that location might be right. We do provide it for lifeguards, for our summer police specials. We have some housing at the Surfside Wastewater Treatment Facility, so that we've got 3 places now. But I think we've heard some of our DPW summer staff might need some support. So that's primarily what I'd look to.
Would you be in favor of an apartment building?
Interesting. I was talking to a fellow in a lot of our retail politics is at the A&P or in the parking lot at the post office. I just came out of the post office, talked to a knowledgeable local guy, member of the planning board, and apartments came up. And it may be time where we need to think through our zoning so that in certain sections, 4 or 5 unit apartment dwellings or something like that might make sense. We just picked me up at Anchor Village. They're not apartments, but they're almost apartments. They're 2-bedroom residential condominiums, but if you call them apartments, that's almost the way half of them function that way.
Okay, his second question. Do you believe there are long-term benefits to the community and our economy by being energy independent? What role should renewable energy play in the long-term vision and planning of our island?
Well, I think ultimately we'll have more renewable, whether it's solar. If in the whole wind debate we had a couple of years ago, it hadn't been a 300-foot tower, it might have been a shorter tower, might not be as efficient. It might have had a very different structure. So, that kind of got us off kilter, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But in terms of being energy independent, I think that's not likely to be a real high objective for us. We've got the 2 cables right now. If we can become a little more efficient and avoid the cost of a 3rd cable, that's great. But honestly, total independence.
You're not concerned about the 3rd cable?
Oh, I am concerned. But okay. I think conservation's the main way to avoid having to put in a 3rd cable, Gino.
Yeah.
They are expensive. They all come through on our electric bills.
Yep.
But the question I thought was about independence.
No,
and
right.
I think
it is.
Total independence is a little unrealistic, frankly.
All right. And now Clifford's questions.
Yep.
If elected, would you build a new fire station?
Yeah, we're going to need a new fire station, whether it's rebuilding the old one, which is equivalent to a new one, at the same time and thinking about an alternative location at another point. A way to think about it might be if we're going to spend, 10 to 15, whatever, million, whatever the number is, we want to make sure our planning horizon works to get the best response time for the bulk of our citizens. I mean, that's the key to me, not just that it has to go at 4 fairgrounds or has to go where it is. We need to be sure wherever it goes, it meets that primary goal. Interesting, one of our questions from the INM has to do with downtown congestion. Congestion on Old South Road here during the summer in some ways is just as critical. And that's an element that the study we did on response time for some locations really didn't address. If the hospital ends up coming out here, and if we're going to build some more commercial out here in the Valero or Glowacki property, I think that impacts the response time of putting the fire station at 4FG. The right answer to that, I'm not sure, Gino,
right.
But it's
what is that response time?
You can get out here and it's blocked both ways, from 3 to 6:30 in the afternoon all summer long, practically.
Yeah.
And what do you do then? So we need to answer that.
If elected, would you shift the debt from the sewer enterprise fund, from the sewer user, to the tax levy as proposed in a citizen's article at this year's town meeting?
That's long been a discussion on the island. We have roughly 50% of our folks on septic and roughly 50% on sewer. And the mix of how you pay for that has always been frankly, I say political, but an item that everybody has to compromise something. No one's ever totally happy. If you're on the sewer and you're paying for all of it, you're not happy. If you're on a septic and you're paying for someone else's sewer system, which you don't get the zoning and build out benefits from, you're not happy either. The mix right now, however, has not worked. And, I'd point out that, was it 2 or 3 years ago, there was an article at town meeting. Frankly, I'm the guy who stood up and explained it. And part of that was to transfer the 1/3 that was meant to come from new connections back to the tax base. It passed town meeting. It didn't pass the ballot box. So I recognize that the current formula, at least for the third of it that went for new connections, needs some kind of taxpayer support. We tried it. It didn't get through the ballot, but we might have to come back on that. In terms of totally putting the sewer on, I think another thing we've talked about or had some discussions, this is sort of more extreme, but it might make sense at some point, put septic and sewer together in one island-wide sewer septic activity. What that implies is that everybody then is paying for everything in some fashion. Now you have to sort out the operating expense issue from the running new lines and new connections. But some kind of concept like that might eventually be the way to go.
But it would have to go through the ballot box again.
It's got to go to town meeting and it's got to go to the ballot box. And, even the first time around when we had to vote to spend 35, then 10 million, so 45 in total for the Surfside plant, it failed the first time, Gino, because I think some folks felt they were being treated unfairly in that and having to pay more than their fair share. So there are arguments on both sides. I think when we had a sewer study in the late 90s, the folks on the committee then had to say whether they were on the sewer or on septic, because there's a little bit of personal interest by everybody here.
Okay. All right. Well, Rick,
Okay.
Anything else you'd like to say hi to the folks out there? And
I would like to say that I'm interested in earning your vote. I've worked hard to do that. I try and be fair, information-based decision-making. The retail politics, I do enjoy speaking to people at the Stop and Shop or the post office. I've got a website, a phone call. I answer my phone. So I look for their support.
all righty.
All right?
Thank you so much.
Good, Gino.
Always
Thank
good
you.
to see you, Rick.
Great. All right.